Welcome to the Chronicles of Lost Relations. We're so grateful to have you here. Your support means everything to us. If today's story resonated with you, or if you have any thoughts or feedback, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more stories that will move, inspire, and connect us all. Thank you for being part of our journey. Let us commence. Michael stood at the kitchen counter, carefully chopping vegetables for dinner. The steady thump of the knife meeting the cutting board resonated in the immaculate suburban kitchen. At 45, he moved with the precision of someone skilled in constructing enduring structures, bridges, highways, and what he had always thought to be an unbreakable family. The scent of roasting chicken wafted through the air, while Emily moved about him, her golden hair glimmering in the late afternoon sunlight. She hummed gently, a melody that Blake couldn't fully identify but still found comforting. At 42, Emily continued to captivate, her allure as strong as it had been on the day they first encountered one another. Emily glanced at the clock and remarked, "Luke's going to be thrilled. I can hardly believe our son is heading off to college soon." Blake nodded, a blend of pride and concern furrowing his brow. "The University of Illinois. Who could have imagined?" Emily reminded him, placing a hand on his arm. "You often claimed he was meant for remarkable achievements." Blake's knife halted in its descent. Indeed, significant achievements often come with substantial costs. Emily's smile wavered briefly. "We will handle it, Blake. We consistently do." Before Blake had a chance to reply, the front door slammed shut, and Luke's voice echoed throughout the house. "Mother, Father, I have arrived home." Luke rushed into the kitchen, his long limbs moving with an exuberant energy. At 18, he resembled Blake at that age perfectly, or so everyone claimed. Blake observed his son as he eagerly grabbed a carrot from the cutting board, a broad smile on his face. "It smells incredible in here," Luke remarked, crunching on the carrot. "What is the reason for the celebration?" Emily chuckled, playfully swatting at Luke. "Just in case you've forgotten, we're celebrating your scholarship, right?" Luke's smile grew broader. "Ah, I see. That small detail." Blake placed his knife aside and turned to look at his son. "Minor detail? Luke, this is significant. You have every reason to take pride in your accomplishments." "I am, Dad," Luke said, his tone becoming more serious. "I truly am. It's simply not a complete scholarship, you understand?" Blake sensed the familiar knot of anxiety tighten in his stomach. "We understand, son, but it's a beginning. We will determine the remaining details." Emily brought her hands together in a sharp clap, breaking the tension in the air. "Okay, let's move on from the discussion about money." Luke arranged the table. Blake completed the task of finishing those vegetables. "We are having a celebration this evening." Discussion concluded. As they settled in for dinner, Blake found himself captivated by the scene unfolding before him. Emily, glowing as always, chuckled at one of Luke's jokes. Luke, lively and vibrant, sharing stories from his recent weeks of high school. This represented the essence of the American dream, didn't it? A lovely residence, a caring family, a son with a promising future before him. What was it that prevented Blake from dispelling the persistent unease in the pit of his stomach? Later that night, after Luke had retreated to his room and Emily had gone to bed, Blake found himself in his home office, immersed in thought, examining financial documents in detail. The figures danced in front of his vision, an overwhelming assortment of costs and diminishing funds. "It doesn't add up," he murmured, raking his fingers through his graying hair. Feeling exasperated, Blake pushed himself away from his desk and stood up, stretching his tense muscles. He noticed Emily's dresser and, on a sudden impulse, approached it. He was uncertain about what he sought, perhaps an overlooked bill or a bank statement he had missed. What he discovered instead was a photograph hidden in the back of Emily's top drawer. Blake's breath hitched in his throat as he scrutinized it. Emily, youthful and untroubled, embraced a man Blake couldn't identify. They shared a laugh, immersed in a moment of unadulterated happiness. Blake's thoughts surged with intensity. Who was this individual? What is the date of this photo? What could have prompted Emily to conceal it for all this time? He carefully returned the photo to the drawer, his hands trembling just a bit. He reassured himself that it was likely nothing. A long-lost friend, a cousin he had yet to encounter. As Blake settled into bed next to his slumbering wife, An unsettling feeling lingered in his mind, suggesting that something was amiss. As the days went by, Blake realized he couldn't shake off the memory of the photograph. He observed Emily with greater intensity, looking for, what is it? A potential indication of dishonesty? A suggestion of the carefree girl captured in the photo? Yet Emily continued to be just as she had always been, loving, attentive, the ideal wife and mother. During a late-night session of browsing the internet, Blake came across the idea. Home-use DNA testing kits are available. The advertisement guaranteed swift and private outcomes. Before he could rationalize his way out of it, Blake placed an order. Upon the arrival of the kit, Blake experienced a wave of guilt. What was he up to? This was his family, his child. Yet the doubt had firmly established itself, and he found it impossible to dispel. With a profound sense of sorrow, he gathered a sample from Luke's hairbrush and dispatched it for analysis. The subsequent weeks were filled with torment. Blake navigated the routine of daily life, work, dinner, family time, yet his thoughts were perpetually adrift. He examined Luke's features, looking for hints of his own likeness. The boys laughed just like his own. The manner in which he knitted his brow while focusing was reminiscent of Blake. Surely these served as evidence of their connection. At last, the email has come through. Blake's hands trembled as he opened it, his heart racing in his chest. As he perused the results, he sensed the world disintegrating around him. Luke was not his biological child. Blake remained in shocked silence, the reality enveloping him in surges of disbelief and fury. Every memory, every moment he had shared with Luke now seemed overshadowed. The pride he had experienced at Luke's achievements, the love that had filled his heart with each "I love you, Dad," it had all been founded on a falsehood. And Emily, Blake's mind wandered to his wife, the woman he had cherished and relied on for more than 20 years. For how long had she been aware? Had she ever intended to share that with him? In the days that ensued, Blake withdrew into his own thoughts. He performed his tasks at work, his thoughts swirling with endless questions and doubts. At home, he observed Emily and Luke with a fresh perspective, looking for indications of the betrayal he had come to realize was there. Emily observed the transformation in him. "Blake, is everything okay?" One evening, she inquired, her voice tinged with worry. "You've seemed quite far away recently." Blake managed to smile. He claimed to be merely stressed about work. "Is a significant project on the horizon?" Emily appeared skeptical, yet she chose not to pursue the matter further. Blake observed her departure, contemplating the multitude of deceptions she might have woven throughout the years. As the days transformed into weeks, Blake's anger grew more intense. He started to delve into Emily's history, seeking out hints regarding the man in the photograph. He meticulously sifted through old emails, bank statements, and anything else that could provide him with answers. However, Emily had exercised caution. There was no solid evidence, merely an increasing accumulation of doubts. At last, after almost a month of quiet anguish, Blake arrived at his breaking point. The evening was tranquil, resembling countless others before it. Luke had stepped out with friends, leaving Blake and Emily by themselves in the house. Blake sat at the kitchen table, the DNA test results concealed in his laptop bag beside him. "Emily," he said, his voice strained with unexpressed feelings, "could we have a conversation?" Emily stood in the doorway, drying her hands with a dish towel. "Absolutely, dear. What are you thinking about?" Blake inhaled deeply, bracing himself for what lay ahead. "I need you to be honest with me," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Who is the true father of Luke?" Emily's face lost all color. She clutched the doorframe for stability, her eyes filled with astonishment and dread. "Blake, could you clarify what you mean?" "Please be honest with me," Blake yelled, striking the table with his fist. Emily startled at the unexpected outburst. "I understand, Emily. I understand that Luke does not belong to me." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "Blake, if you would be so kind." "It was an error, I promise. It was just that one time." Blake let out a harsh laugh. "Just once? That was all it required to shatter our family." He retrieved the DNA test results from his bag and placed them on the table with a flick of his wrist. Emily's gaze flitted between the documents and Blake's expression, her lips quivering slightly. "For how long have you been aware?" Blake insisted. Emily settled into a chair, her body trembling with quiet tears. She confessed that she had always known. Blake, you must realize that I never intended for this to occur. I cherish you. We created a life together, a life constructed on deception. Blake let out a sharp spit. He rose to his feet, unable to endure the sight of her any longer. Who is he, Emily? Am I familiar with him? Emily shook her head, tears flowing down her cheeks. It is of no significance. That was an error, Blake. An unfortunate error. Luke is your son in every meaningful aspect. However, Blake had reached a point where he could no longer hear. The treachery, the prolonged deceit, it was overwhelming. Silently, he took his keys and made his way to the door. Blake, hold on a moment. Emily shouted after him. Where are you headed? Blake halted at the door, his hand resting on the knob. He glanced at Emily one final time, absorbing the features of the woman he had cherished for so long. He stated it plainly, away. I am unable to do that. I am unable to be present at this moment. And with that, he vanished, leaving behind the broken fragments of what he had once believed to be an ideal life. Blake drove for hours, his thoughts a turbulent swirl of memories and accusations. He discovered himself on a shadowy, twisting path, encircled by majestic pines. Unintentionally, he found himself at the old cabin in Wisconsin where he and Emily had celebrated their honeymoon. Upon arriving at the crumbling building, a harsh laugh slipped from his mouth. How appropriate to find oneself here, at the location where their journey together had genuinely commenced. Blake spent the night in the cabin, curled up on a dusty old couch, his phone buzzing continuously with calls and messages from Emily and Luke. By morning, he had come to a conclusion. He was unable to return, not to the deceit, not to the treachery. With trembling hands, he composed a message to his work assistant, Becca, directing her to manage his clients and shut down the office. He switched off his phone and threw it into the glove compartment. With the dawn breaking over the Wisconsin wilderness, Michael vanished, forsaking the only existence he had ever experienced. 5 years had elapsed since Michael disappeared into the Wisconsin wilderness, abandoning a life fractured by treachery. The cabin that had once served as a honeymoon retreat was now his enduring home, a time-worn stronghold against the life he had departed. Blake, with a rugged beard and weathered hands, sat at his improvised desk, studying blueprints for a modest local project. He had transformed his career into that of a freelance contractor, engaging in work that occupied his time while remaining under the radar. The locals referred to him as John, a reserved individual skilled in construction, harboring a past he seldom spoke of. The sound of a knock at the door interrupted Blake's focus. Visitors were infrequent in this place and definitely not desired. He approached the door with caution, his heart racing as he contemplated whether his carefully built solitude was on the verge of collapse. As he opened the door, the scene that unfolded before him took his breath away. Luke, transformed from the awkward teenager he once knew, stood on his porch. At 23, he had become a man, his face etched with anger and resentment. "Greetings, Father," Luke spat, the word laced with irony. "Should I refer to you as John now?" Blake held onto the doorframe, finding his balance. "Luke," he succeeded, his voice rough from lack of use. "How did you come across me?" Luke pushed past him and entered the cabin. "Is it significant? I have arrived. I appreciate your input, but I will pass." Blake shut the door, turning to face his son. No, not his son. He reminded himself with a tinge of bitterness the young man standing in front of him was unfamiliar, a poignant reminder of the life he had abandoned. "What is it that you desire, Luke?" Blake inquired, making an effort to maintain a steady tone. Luke walked back and forth in the compact living space, observing the minimal furniture and piles of work papers. "What is it that I desire?" He let out a laugh devoid of humor. "I wish I could have the last 5 years again. I desire the father who remained steadfast and did not leave his family without a trace. I want his voice to crack, and he should pause, gathering himself. Look me in the eye and explain why you chose to leave." Blake settled into a chair, acutely aware of the weight of his 50 years. "It might be difficult for you to grasp." "Give it a shot," Luke confronted, his eyes aflame. From my perspective, it seems you are simply someone who fled when faced with challenges. The accusation pierced through him, yet Blake remained silent. He had dedicated 5 years to suppressing his emotions, and he was determined not to allow them to emerge now. Luke pressed on, his words flowing more rapidly, filled with fury. Are you aware of the impact your actions have had on us? Mom was heartbroken. For months, she struggled to function. What about me? I had to mature quickly, Dad. I couldn't afford college without your support. He paused, running a hand through his hair in frustration. What comes next? Blake inquired, apprehensive about the response. Luke met his gaze, and for an instant Blake glimpsed a trace of the boy he once knew. My mother is ill, facing a terminal condition, and we are financially struggling. We cannot afford the treatment she needs. The news struck Blake with the force of a physical blow. Is Emily dying? Regardless of the circumstances, the idea of her pain struck a deep chord within him. Blake said softly, I'm sorry to hear that, but I don't see how that relates to me. Luke's expression twisted in fury. Are you serious? You are indebted to us. You departed, leaving us with emptiness. You should at least cover Mom's treatment and my tuition. You are accountable for this. Blake rose suddenly, a surge of anger igniting within him. What is my responsibility? Are you interested in discussing responsibility, Luke? What about the obligation to be truthful? To avoid constructing a family on falsehoods? Luke took a step back, bewilderment taking the place of his anger. What do you mean? With trembling hands, Blake pulled out a tattered envelope from his desk drawer. He had held on to the DNA test results throughout the years, a persistent reminder of the reasons behind his departure. Silently, he pushed the papers toward Luke. Luke's eyes grew large as he examined the document, his complexion draining of color. This cannot be correct. It is an error. It's not an error, Blake stated, his tone icy. Your mother deceived us both for 18 years. If you seek answers or someone to hold accountable for your issues, reach out to her. Or, even better, seek out your true father. I'm confident he would be eager to assist. Luke reeled backward as though he had been hit. No, he whispered. No, that is not true. This is merely a pretext, a means to rationalize leaving us behind. Blake averted his gaze, unable to withstand the anguish and bewilderment reflected in Luke's expression. I believe it would be best if you left now, he said softly. This is not the end, Luke snarled, crushing the test results in his hand. You can't just unleash this revelation and then leave without addressing it. Here we go again. As Luke stormed out, slamming the door behind him, Blake collapsed onto the floor, his legs giving way beneath him. The long-anticipated confrontation had finally arrived and passed, leaving him with a sense of emptiness and exhaustion. As days went by, Blake struggled to forget the meeting with Luke. The resentment and sense of betrayal he had harbored for years had emerged once more, intense and agonizing. He immersed himself in his work, accepting more projects than usual to silence the voices in his head. During one of those late-night work sessions, his phone rang. Though the number was unknown, an inexplicable urge drove Blake to pick up the call. Hello, he said with a hint of caution. Blake, is that truly you? The voice on the other end was recognizable, filled with a mix of astonishment and gratitude. Blake felt a sudden tightness in his throat. Is that you, Alex? What is the source of this number? Mark, an old college friend and fellow engineer, let out a soft chuckle. It was quite a challenge, I must say. When Luke arrived at my office inquiring about you, I realized I needed to find you. Blake stiffened at the sound of Luke's name. What did you say to him? Nothing at all, Alex assured him. Blake, can you please explain what is happening? After 5 years away, your son is now claiming that you've abandoned your family? This behavior is uncharacteristic of you. Blake let out a deep sigh, rubbing his hand across his face. It's quite intricate, Alex, more than you realize. Then it was straightforward for me, Alex insisted. I've been managing your former business to the best of my ability, but your clients are longing for your presence. I truly miss you. No matter what has occurred or what you are fleeing from, allow me to assist you. For a brief instant, Blake felt a pull of temptation. The idea of opening up to someone, of finally sharing the weight he had borne in solitude for such an extended period, felt nearly insurmountable. Yet the apprehension of being judged, of confronting the pain of betrayal once more, restrained him. Text. "Thank you for the offer, Alex," Blake finally said. "This is a matter I must address independently." Alex paused in silence for a moment. Understood. "However, Blake, it's important for you to understand that Luke is determined to persist. He is resolute in ensuring that you confront your obligations, in one way or another." After ending the call, Blake remained seated in the dimness of his cabin. The sound of Alex's words reverberates in his thoughts. Luke was determined to pursue this matter further. With the revelation of his true parentage, the possibilities of his actions were now limitless. The following morning, Blake received yet another surprising call. This time, it was a message from Becca Thompson, his previous assistant. "Blake," Becca's voice carried a sense of uncertainty. "I hope I'm not intruding, but I felt it was important to reach out to you." "Becca," Blake said, his tone revealing his surprise. "It's wonderful to hear from you. Is everything okay?" A silence lingered on the other end of the line. "No, not really." "Blake, I have been working hard to maintain your business since your departure, but it has been quite challenging, with all that is unfolding between Luke and Emily." Blake's hold on the phone grew more intense. "Could you clarify what you mean? What is going on?" Becca let out a deep sigh. "Luke has initiated legal action against you, Blake. He is pursuing legal action for financial assistance, asserting that you have a legal obligation to cover his college tuition and Emily's medical expenses." The news struck Blake with the force of a gut punch. A legal action, following all that had transpired, once the truth was revealed. Was Luke still pursuing this? "Blake, are you present?" Becca's voice drew him back to the present moment. "Indeed, I am present," he murmured. "Becca, I'm at a loss for words." "Promise me you'll fight this," Becca urged. "Blake, I'm unsure of your reasons for leaving, but I understand you. You are not the person Luke is portraying you as. I would be glad to assist you. We can collect evidence and construct a case." Blake shut his eyes, contemplating his choices. After 5 years of evading his past, it appeared that it was now intent on confronting him. Perhaps it was time to confront this directly and stop evading it. "All right," he finally said. "All right, Becca, please let me know what steps I should take." In the coming weeks, Blake collaborated closely with Becca and a team of attorneys to construct his defense. It involved unearthing distressing memories, experiencing once more the instant he uncovered Emily's treachery. With every document collected and each statement crafted, Blake experienced a flicker of the determination that had previously characterized him. As the court date drew near, Blake returned to Chicago, the city he had once considered home. The recognizable skyline evoked a surge of memories, encompassing both joy and sorrow. He arrived at an unremarkable hotel, seeking to evade any unexpected meetings with individuals from his history. The evening prior to the trial, Blake found himself in his hotel room, gazing at the shimmering city lights. The sudden knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. Upon opening the door, he discovered Alex waiting there, a bottle of whiskey in hand. "I thought this might be helpful," Alex remarked, lifting the bottle. "Perhaps a welcoming presence." Blake paused briefly before moving aside to welcome his old friend in. As they sat together with a drink in hand, the years appeared to dissolve into the background. After a considerable period, Blake experienced a slight easing of the burden he carried on his shoulders. "You know," Alex said, swirling the amber liquid in his glass, "no matter what unfolds tomorrow, remember that you have support in this, Blake. There are individuals supporting you." Blake nodded, appreciative of the support, yet uncertain if he warranted it. As he got ready for bed that night, he braced himself for the challenge to come. Tomorrow he would confront his past, challenge the deceptions that had shattered his life, and strive for the truth, no matter the sacrifice. The morning of the trial arrived, cold and gray, reflecting the steel in Blake's eyes as he adjusted his tie. Years of solitude had forged his resolve, and he stood prepared for conflict. A decisive knock heralded the entrance of his lawyer, Sarah. "Are you prepared to conclude this?" Sarah inquired, her demeanor professional. Blake gave a brief nod. "Let us enter them." The courthouse steps were a barrage of flashing cameras and loud inquiries. Blake walked in, his expression unreadable. Upon entering, his gaze quickly settled on Luke and Emily. Luke's jaw was clenched in determination, whereas Emily appeared delicate and overwhelmed. Blake experienced no sympathy, just a steely resolve to ensure justice was served. As the proceedings commenced, Blake observed the legal maneuverings with a sense of detached interest. It was only when Luke took the stand that he truly engaged, his gaze fixed intently on the young man he had once referred to as son. Mr. Harrison, the attorney representing Luke, began. "Could you please describe your relationship with the defendant to the court?" Luke glanced at Blake before responding. "He was my dad. He nurtured me, imparting all the knowledge I possess. 5 years ago, he left us without a word. What effect did this abandonment have on you and your mother?" Luke's voice trembled just a bit. "It shattered us. Mom broke down. I had to leave college to care for her. Now, with her illness, we are overwhelmed by medical bills. The man who was meant to support us is absent and untraceable." Blake remained indifferent as he listened. As he approached the stand to testify, he exuded confidence, his voice unwavering and composed. "Mr. Harrison," Sarah started, "could you clarify for the court the reasons behind your departure from your family 5 years ago?" Blake's eyes scanned the courtroom, finally resting on Luke and Emily. "I departed after realizing that my whole existence had been founded on deception. Luke is not my biological son. My wife, Emily, was unfaithful and misled me for 18 years. A whisper spread across the courtroom. Luke's complexion drained of color as Emily appeared to withdraw into her seat. "What led you to this discovery?" Sarah applied pressure. "I discovered an old photograph, grew curious, and decided to have a DNA test conducted. The findings were definitive. Emily confessed to the affair when faced with the truth. As evidence was presented and testimonies were delivered, Blake maintained a calm demeanor. In the midst of a recess, he encountered Emily directly in the hallway. "Blake," she started, her voice quivering, "I understand that I can never atone for my actions, but please hold on to it." Blake interrupted her, his tone frigid. "You had 18 years to be honest. Now is not the time for you to seek forgiveness." Emily's eyes brimmed with tears. "What is the situation with Luke? He is not guilty in any of this." Blake's expression remained unchanged. "Luke made his decision when he opted to take legal action against me. He has grown up, Emily. He is accountable for his own actions." As Blake turned to leave, he noticed Luke standing close by, having caught the conversation. "What makes you so distant?" Luke insisted, "following all that we have experienced together." "Are we?" Blake interjected, his voice cutting through the conversation. "There is no us, Luke. Your mother's deceptions ensured that outcome. Are you interested in discussing the topic of cold? Imagine uncovering that your whole family is built on deception." Luke's face turned red with fury. "I was unaware. How can you hold me accountable for something beyond my control? I am not imposing any punishment on you." Blake responded in a calm manner. "I am not accountable for you. You have reached adulthood. Your challenges belong to you alone." Upon re-entering the courtroom, Blake experienced a somber sense of satisfaction. He had reached his limit with being controlled by guilt and unfounded responsibilities. The trial ended with a decision favoring Blake. The judge dismissed the lawsuit, referencing the evidence of Emily's deceit and the determination that Blake was not Luke's biological father. Blake stood, fastening his jacket, prepared to leave their lives behind for good. However, the narrative had not reached its conclusion. Just as Blake was getting ready to depart from Chicago, an unexpected visitor arrived, his old friend, Alex. "Blake, we should have a conversation," Alex exclaimed with urgency. "It concerns Rick Sawyer." Blake's gaze sharpened at the reference to Luke's biological father. "What is the situation regarding him?" Alex detailed how he and Becca had discovered evidence of financial manipulation. For years, Rick had been diverting funds from Emily's accounts, skillfully utilizing his role as her lawyer to conceal his actions. Alex concluded that he had been draining them of resources, all the while ensuring Emily remained silent about the affair. A chilling anger enveloped Blake. This had transcended his personal betrayal. The matter at hand revolved around justice. With Becca's assistance, Blake carefully compiled evidence, constructing a solid case against Rick Sawyer. Once they possessed all they required, Blake faced Rick in his lavish office. "Blake," Rick said with a hint of anxiety, "this is quite surprising. How may I assist you today?" Blake casually threw a file onto Rick's desk. "Begin by providing an explanation for this." As Rick flipped through the documents, his complexion paled. "This information is confidential." "Enough with the nonsense, Rick," Blake retorted. "We possess comprehensive knowledge. The scandal, the misappropriation, everything involved." Rick's facade fell apart. "You fail to grasp the situation. It was never meant to reach this point. I initially required a small amount of money, but then you became overly ambitious," Blake concluded for him, "and you allowed Emily and Luke to endure the consequences." Rick's gaze flicked toward the door. "What is it that you seek from me?" Blake leaned in, his voice a hushed whisper filled with intensity. "I would like you to admit something. Regarding the incident, the monetary deception, everything involved, you will confront the consequences of your actions." "What if I decline?" Rick made a feeble challenge. Blake smiled, yet the gesture lacked any warmth. "Then I will take care of it myself. When I'm finished, you will be left with neither a cent nor a trace of your reputation." Confronted by the facts and Blake's steadfast determination, Rick succumbed. He admitted to all his wrongdoings, triggering a legal cascade that would result in the loss of his law license and the majority of his possessions. After everything that had transpired, Blake encountered Luke and Emily once more. In the courthouse lobby, the atmosphere was thick with the burden of recent revelations. "I'm not sure how to express this," Luke started. "All this time, there's nothing to say," Blake replied, his tone even. "Rick Sawyer will be held accountable for his actions. The funds he took will be given back to you and your mother. It ought to suffice for medical costs and your educational needs." Emily stepped forward, her hopes reflected in her eyes. "Blake, what does this imply?" "It signifies that I have acted correctly," Blake interjected. "Nothing else. The falsehoods, the illusion that lingers endlessly." "Yet we remain family," Luke argued softly.